Everyone for coming this morning. First of all, I know it's bright and early, so thanks for coming and being our audience. We're a student team from Queens that worked this semester with the Bowman Center on a project to quantify the disturbed land for solar deployment in Ontario. And today we're going to walk you through the progress that we've made over this semester on this project.
We're happy to take any questions that you have for us at the end, but we just ask until then to just throw them into the chat and we'll answer them later. Let us begin by acknowledging that Queens is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, and Sarnia is situated on Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, as well as Ojibwe and Chippewa territory. We are grateful to be able to live and learn on these lands.
So to start off, we're going to do a quick intro to the team, just so you can get to know all of us.
My name is Ivy. I'm in my 4th year of biochemical engineering.
I'm Suchet. I'm a 5th year computer engineering student.
I'm Olivia. I'm a 5th year biochemical engineering student.
I'm James, and I'm in 5th year mechanical engineering.
So to start off, to walk through our agenda, can you guys see the screen we're sharing okay? Yeah. So first we're going to go through some of our background, then going to walk through our problem definition and problem statement. We're then going to go through our scope, walk you guys through some of the barriers and constraints of our project, go through our research and estimation methodologies, then go through the potential opportunities, impacts, implementation risks, and then finally end off with our conclusions. So to dive right into it, I want you guys to imagine a world where Ontario's energy needs are met. Not by new wilderness being cleared or farmland being taken, but by repurposing the land that we've already disturbed. But the question is there enough of it? Today, we're going to explore whether Ontario's energy needs can be met through the available disturbed land to meet its growing energy demands without sacrificing more natural resources. Can we harness the land that we've already altered, or will we have to look elsewhere? You might be wondering what disturbed land is, so we're going to start by defining that. And it's land that has been altered from its natural state due to human activities such as construction, mining, agriculture, or urban development, and that's depicted in the figures below. To start off, here's a snapshot of Ontario's current energy landscape. We're going to walk through a couple of key definitions to help frame the data. First, installed capacity, which is the maximum amount of power that the electricity system can produce at any given time. And this number reflects potential, not actual output. On the other hand, we have electricity usage, which is the amount of electricity actually consumed over a period of time, and it's usually reported in terawatt hours. This accounts for demand patterns, generation availability, and real-world usage conditions. As you can see, Ontario currently has a total installed capacity of 39 gigawatts. About 70% of that is already considered decarbonized, coming from nuclear, hydro, wind, solar, or bioenergy. And of that 70%, solar is a small portion of that, with currently 2.6 gigawatts of Ontario's current energy capacity. So there is significant opportunity for expansion and integration into Ontario's energy system. Moving forward with our projections, we're going to base all of our estimates on usage, not capacity, because it gives a better idea and a more accurate picture of what the energy system actually needs to produce.
Ontario is anticipating a 75% increase in demand from 150 terawatt hours to 260 terawatt hours by 2050. You're probably wondering what 1 terawatt may mean. To put it into perspective, 1 terawatt hour could power 100,000 homes for an entire year. We've broken down where you'll see the increase in each sector. You'll notice that the largest increase at 42 terawatt hours is in transportation, and we expect to see that through the increase in use of transportation, aka electric vehicles.
So I'm going to be talking a little bit about where this energy can come from and the different potential sources we can use, and the different advantages and disadvantages of each source. So beginning with nuclear energy, we have a very sustainable and high density output compared to the amount of land it uses, and it is non-dependent on various factors like weather or anything else that will vary day to day. The disadvantages, although it is considered a non-carbon emitting source, it is non-renewable and it produces hazardous waste. And in relation to disturbed land, it requires a facility to be built in proximity to large body of water for cooling, meaning that it is limited in the place that it can be built. For hydropower, it is renewable, established, and very sustainable. However, it is extremely site specific and it's nearly impossible to implement a hydropower station on existing disturbed land because of the requirements for water flow and change in elevation. Moving on to wind energy, we have that it works well on disturbed land, and although this is for certain types of disturbed land, it doesn't integrate well into, for example, a urban landscape. And also it is dependent on weather conditions and can vary significantly day to day or week to week. Finally, solar energy is highly adaptable, and it's ideal for implementing on disturbed land, primarily because it doesn't reduce its efficiency at smaller scales. However, the disadvantage is that the energy production is intermittent and it can vary extremely depending on location. So, as I said before, why solar? First of all, efficient use of land. The solar power doesn't decrease at smaller scales, and it can be implemented very easily onto existing infrastructure. In addition, the point at which the power is produced is very close to where the power is being used most of the time, which means that transmission infrastructure is pretty much unnecessary in most cases. And in addition, the time to production for solar panel generation is extremely small in comparison to other energy production methods. So there are two types of solar actually. First of all, we have concentrated solar power, which is essentially a tower surrounded by a field of mirrors that redirect the sunlight and essentially heat up a working fluid. And the advantages of this is that power production becomes a lot more efficient at high temperatures, meaning that because of the immense amount of power being concentrated in this tower, it can be an extremely efficient method of energy production. However, the amount of space required for this is significant, and it's extremely difficult to implement this in an urban scenario or any scenario where you don't have a very large amount of space. Also, it doesn't produce any energy with ambient light, and it needs direct sunlight. Now, photovoltaic solar is the more common type, and that's the type of solar we're going to be looking at primarily in this evaluation. And the advantage of this, as I said before, is the efficiency doesn't lose efficiency at smaller scales of implementation, and it can generate power from ambient light. It can be implemented almost anywhere. So, looking at how much energy we can produce for a given amount of land, we looked at a number of solar farms across Ontario, which is within our selected region. Looking at these solar farms, there's quite a variety of the power generation per area. So as you can see, the Sarnia Solar Project has the highest energy density, with the Kingston Solar Project at the lowest density of the plants we looked at. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Energy production can vary significantly with the location due to weather conditions and also latitude, relating to the amount of atmosphere the sun has to travel through to hit the surface of the earth. And it's also important that we look at the energy production per year instead of the energy capacity, because this is the amount of energy that a given amount of area can produce in a year, not just the capacity that it can support, which although two plants may have the same capacity, their actual generation might vary significantly. So using this number, we calculated an average across all of these power plants. And we calculated that we can expect to produce approximately 80 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. Now, one of the reasons the power plants varied so significantly can be due to spacing of the panels. So a lot of the time there will be significant space in between the panels for maintenance purposes or just installation, and that can really affect the energy production per unit area. But using this area as a standard, we can calculate that to produce the amount of energy that Ontario will require in the coming years. To meet the electricity demand, we will need approximately 1,000 square kilometers of solar panel area.
So to put all that background into the context of the problem we're trying to solve, Ontario is committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, which a lot of people know, which means dramatically increasing our reliance on clean energy. To achieve this, it's estimated that we need an additional 112 terawatt hours of usage annually, and that's a massive expansion. But the real challenge is not just how much energy we need, but where we're gonna build it. So this includes a mix of solar, wind, nuclear, and hydro as depicted in the figure, and these all have different land use needs. And you can see that solar is just a fraction of the total 112 terawatt hour increase in usage. So the big question we're trying to look at is how much of Ontario's total energy target can actually be met by deploying solar on disturbed land. This is where our project's going to come in. And instead of clearing new land for solar projects, we're investigating how much of this energy demand can be met by deploying solar on the disturbed land. To recap our problem in a bit of a more digestible manner, Ontario's electricity demand is projected to grow from 150 to 260 terawatt hours by 2050. Currently, 70% of the province's power is already decarbonized, but meeting the future demand sustainably will require strategic land use planning. And our project explores how much of this demand can be met by deploying solar panels on disturbed land.
The objectives for our project are first to quantify the availability of disturbed land, identify any possible barriers to implementation, as well as provide any recommendations for future implementation of our methodologies. Some barriers and constraints we experienced were a time limitation. We were constrained to only 12 weeks to complete our project. We had to rely on publicly available data, and our analysis is highly assumption-driven. The evaluated region is approximately 60,000 kilometers squared of land area, and we chose our region based off the most densely populated areas to avoid having to install new transmission systems. As you can see in the figure, you can see the population density is mostly in the southern area of Ontario, and you can see that the area we chose to analyze basically is a straight line from Ottawa down to Sarnia, and then all of that area below.
So we have classified the disturbed lands into 4 major types. For commercial, industrial, and educational land, we're majorly looking at the rooftop areas of these types of lands. And for agricultural land, we're focusing on the land used to grow specific types of crops.
So we tried to follow this estimation methodology to do all of our analysis. This section contains a summary of our estimation methods, and they could be used in future as a standardized framework for conducting land estimations for other jurisdictions. The first step is to define your scope and objectives. So this estimating the amount of disturbed land could be used for several purposes, as well as policy planning, resource allocation. We also wanted to identify any geographic boundaries as we did. The next step is data collection and sources. We used a variety of geospatial data, government records, as well as survey and historical data. Third is to do the land area calculation, so applying geospatial analysis tools such as ArcGIS or QGIS to calculate land area, as well as using statistical methods when that information was not available. And lastly, provide any considerations or recommendations. We wanted to ensure that our estimations remained consistent. We wanted to be transparent, so document all assumptions and any data sources used. We wanted this to be adaptable, so allow for adjustments based on the purpose of the project to do the land estimations. And lastly, accuracy. We wanted to implement any quality control measures. This often included an external validation or a secondary check. The estimation tools that we used, you heard me mention QGIS. This is a free open source software. It allows users to create, edit, and analyze published data. We use this in conjunction with OpenStreetMap, which is a QGIS platform, which essentially allows you to import the map into the software. And then that is what ultimately allows you to gather that information, which is typically supplied by national government agencies as well as local councils. It also allowed us to categorize land by industrial, educational, as well as commercial, and create polygons around that specific land to give us an output of land area.
So moving into the numbers, for the industrial land calculation, this was primarily done using the QGIS software with OpenStreetMap. So for this method, essentially we outline our selected search area and then run a search using QGIS, and it will select and outline and calculate the area for all of the industrial land within our selected region. And we check for intersection with our selected region to make sure that this is what we're searching for. And then it can come up with a table of all our area values, which can be added together in Excel to create a total industrial land area of approximately 660 kilometers within our selected region. Now, to calculate the rooftop area within this region, unfortunately, due to our limited computing power, we can't calculate every single building in Southern Ontario, which is what would be required to find this rooftop area. However, we can extrapolate from the major industrial areas. So zooming in on the major industrial areas within our selected region, we can calculate from a number of different regions that we can expect to have approximately 40% rooftop coverage within our industrial land, and extrapolating this over the total search area, which was the 660 kilometers of industrial land within our region, we can estimate that approximately 280 square kilometers of this will be rooftop area.
To estimate the agricultural land availability, we leveraged agrivoltaic systems, also known as solar agriculture co-location, which involves the simultaneous use of land for both solar energy production and agricultural cultivation, as shown as the image in the bottom right corner. So first we identified crops that benefit from agrivoltaic systems from a literature review. We then collected the seeded crop data from Ontario field crop data sets by county for those selected crops, and then summed the total available seeded land for the evaluated region, and that brought us to an approximate of 10,000 kilometers squared. And it's important to note that our calculations provide an overview of the total potential suitable land area and don't account for factors that influence feasibility.
So in order to understand the scale of the opportunity on educational land, let's take a quick look at how much educational infrastructure that we have in Ontario. So we have approximately 4,000 elementary schools, 900 secondary schools, 24 colleges, more than 500 career colleges, and 24 universities. Our estimations on educational lands were majorly done with Google Earth by taking the average rooftop areas of the different types of educational institutions and based on some several samples in order to get the final answer. And here's a breakdown on the numbers that we got. As you can see, we have approximately 40 kilometer squares of rooftop areas on educational land located across entire Ontario. And about within that 40 kilometer squares, about 30 kilometer squares are located within Southern Ontario. So 30 kilometer squares, meaning that about twice the amount of the size of downtown Toronto is currently idle. This provides a reliable and long-term benefit opportunity to generate electricity without the need to competing or develop for new land areas.
To do the commercial land estimate, two different methods were used. First was an energy usage or energy intensity estimation, and then was verified using QGIS. So it's predicted that commercial sector net annual energy demand is projected to grow from 50 to 60 terawatt hours by 2050, which was reported by the IESO. Next, it's also estimated that the average energy usage for commercial buildings in Ontario is 1.1 gigajoules per meter squared, which was gathered by Statistics Canada in 2016. Using the energy requirement, the current energy requirement of 50 terawatt hours divided by the energy intensity, and then making the assumption that the amount of commercial land is relative to the population, multiplying that by the population ratio, it's given that you have about 100 kilometers squared of commercial land area in Southern Ontario. Using QGIS mapping, this confirmed our estimate by yielding as well 100 kilometers squared of commercial.
So another area that we considered was parking lot area. Now it's important to note that some of this may intersect with the commercial or industrial land. However, observing various sections of Southern Ontario, we were able to piece together the entirety of our selected region and map it out using QGIS to estimate a total sum of 150 square kilometers of parking area within our selected region.
By looking at the sum of estimations that we have so far, we have approximately more than 10,000 kilometer squares of disturbed land available within Southern Ontario, which is about 1.4 times the size of GTA. Although this number does not contain all of the possibilities on disturbed land located in Southern Ontario, it is sufficient enough to cover the demand on electricity that we need in Southern Ontario. And here are some further opportunities that, although that are not included in our previous estimations, but can be considered in future development or researches. The first one is post-mining sets, which is often considered as unsuitable for agriculture or other usage, but it can be reused as solar farms. And also the top area of the sound barriers across the along the highways can also provide a unique opportunity for solar panel installations.
While our approach of deploying solar panels on already disturbed land offers a sustainable alternative for energy generation, it also has a range of environmental, social, and economic implications. To begin with the environmental impacts, repurposing of previously degraded land reduces the need for deforestation or agricultural displacement. Installing solar panels on disturbed land does minimize the ecological footprint in comparison to projects that require fresh land clearing, such as constructing a nuclear plant or installing windmills. But solar farms can impact local ecosystems by altering albedo, which is how light reflects off of a surface, which can directly affect microclimates. Next is social impacts. Deploying solar panels on disturbed land will demonstrate economic opportunities, as it'll provide many jobs in the implementation step. It'll help Canada reach its energy transition goals. And also, we do expect to see some concerns over land use issues. This could lead to compliance issues, specifically from farmers. You may have noticed that 10,000 kilometers squared was estimated from agricultural land. We do estimate that a lot of farmers may be hesitant to implement agrivoltaic systems due to any interference with fertilization equipment or any harvesting equipment. So we do expect that number to be heavily reduced just based off of compliance. Lastly, our energy and climate impacts. So using solar energy will greatly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which aligns with Canada's climate targets for 2050. This will offset our carbon dioxide emissions. There is a concern with grid stability, and we do expect there to need to be some advances in battery technology for greater effectiveness of these systems.
So beyond our major estimations on disturbed lands, we have also taken a step back to look at some possible risks that could arise in real world implementations. Although these risks are beyond our scope of our major estimation of our research, we felt that it was important to highlight a couple of major challenges that the decision makers may need to be aware of. Right, one of the most immediate challenge that we can see is the roof load bearing. While installing solar panels on rooftops could significantly add weight to the rooftop structures, possibly causing structure damage, sagging, and even eventually leading to costly repairs. Therefore, this means that structure assessment and even structure reinforcement could be necessary before implementation. Another challenge is caused by the decentralized generation. When we have a large amount of small-scale power sources feeding electricity back into the grid, this could possibly cause overloading of local transformers, and could also create a stress on voltage regulation equipment. The effects of community should also be considered, as we believe that community resistance could possibly slow and even halt the solar project. This could possibly be caused by the concerns on safety or concerns on property values, or it could also be caused by lack of information about the solar project. Finally, while some institutions may share disturbed land with agricultural land, agrivoltaic restrictions may arise. Although Ontario permits solar installation as on-farm uses under the 2020 provincial policy statement, however, this the system has to be worked alongside with the farming operations, meaning that factors such as panel heights or spacing should be considered. Meanwhile, the rules and the laws may vary locally, so it has to be considered case by case.
So to conclude, in our research, we found that there's ample disturbed land available for solar deployment. We calculated that about 1,200 kilometers squared of land would be required for the demand, and we have about 10,000 kilometers squared available. There's also additional potential on top of this because there's further availability from other disturbed land categories that we didn't consider and other regions beyond southeastern Ontario. But it's important to recognize that there is limitations to our analysis because it was based on high-level estimates. Further detailed studies would be needed to confirm land suitability and availability. Thanks everyone for watching, and now we're going to take any questions. And I think we're going to start by questions that were entered in the chat throughout the presentation.
I think first is Ed's question, if you want to take that one, Olivia.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm just going to find the question.
Oh, it was, has anyone conducted a study like this in Ontario or anywhere else? That is, estimate disturbed land area. Is this a novel study?
So to answer that, yes, it is novel in the approach we took and the context. The IESO reports like solar potential, but these were included in overall renewable energy capacity needs or generation potential, and it wasn't considering disturbed land specifically. There's also other academic literatures out there, and it quantifies disturbed land, but not specifically for solar deployment, and again, not specifically in Ontario. So what we presented in the Ontario context is novel.
I can take the next question from Marshall. It says it appears that your estimates for industrial land and educational land are specific to now, while the commercial land estimate is a projection for 2050. Is this correct? I'm sorry if I misspoke. It's using the numbers from now. I just wanted to illustrate how it's projected to change by 2050, but I used the current numbers for disturbed land that we have currently. Great. And then the last question I see here is from Ed as well. Oh, there's two more, but one from Ed. Do you have an estimate of how long it would take to build a new commercial scale PV project, say 100 megawatts? So this is a good question. I think it would vary a lot by area. I would predict it would take about 2 to 3 years for 100 megawatt commercial scale photovoltaic solar project. This could change. We estimated it would take about half a year to a year for feasibility and pre-development, and then about, again, a half a year to a full year of permitting as well as financing. This could take longer. For example, if you wanted to implement an agrivoltaic system, there's still policies that prevent you from implementing agrivoltaics, despite it actually being proven that it would help crop yield. So if you were trying to implement a system like that, I expect it would take maybe 12 months to 24 months, maybe even a couple of years. And then the procurement and construction stage typically takes about 12 months to 18 months for 100 megawatts. And then lastly, just getting it into production would take a couple months as well. So overall, about 2 to 3 years. And then I would say if you're doing a more highly specialized system like agrivoltaics, I would expect that to take maybe 3-4 years plus, just because it hasn't been done before. And then there's a question here. Industrial wind turbines are constrained by setback requirements, which probably prevent sitting them in industrial, commercial, or institutional disturbed lands. Is there an opportunity to co-locate renewable wind and solar on disturbed land? Is it a reasonable assumption that this would increase the energy density per land area?
I can talk about that a little bit. It is a very reasonable assumption. And quite often there is wind implementation on kind of agricultural land, although obviously it's very difficult to implement wind energy in an urban setting. But within an agricultural land setting, then it's absolutely feasible to implement wind and solar.
We did see there are plants that do implement both. For the sake of our project, the reason we didn't consider it too far into depth is just due to the nature of the land that we were analyzing. So a lot of the land that we were looking at, for example, industrial, commercial, or parking lot area, is already paved, and we would be implementing the solar on existing infrastructure. And we thought implementing windmills, just because it can't be too close to where people are, just due to risks that are associated with that, as well as safety risks. We just decided that for the scope of this project, it was better just to consider solar alone on one spot of land. Does that answer your question? Great. Please speculate on other constraints. If there's available disturbed land, what are the constraints? What are the constraints restraining development of renewables on disturbed land?
I can talk a little bit about this. I think one of the primary constraints is, especially for photovoltaic deployment, is capital investment. Because although in the term of probably 5 to 10 years, solar systems pay themselves off in terms of energy requirements, initially there is quite a large investment to deploy these solar operations. So I think primarily that's the main constraint for businesses and individuals buying these solar systems.
Actually, just to add another quick add on to that, one other thing that needs to be considered is, as I mentioned earlier, when there's a lot of separate energy generating sources, this could add extra stress or load to the existing electricity network. So that is definitely another thing. That is, I guess, one of the major constraints. If the uh, if the source of the uh, electricity generation is too separate, we might have to upgrade the electricity network system, and that's definitely something that needs to be considered in this case.
The next question I see is, do you have a notional cost estimate for dollar per megawatt of installed capacity if PV also for grid scale energy storages and chemical batteries compared to new natural gas costs? So just based off of our findings of a price per watt of PV, it does come out to be about $1 million per megawatt to install a PV system, and this is without any operating costs. This is just the capital expenditure. Comparing this to natural gas costs, natural gas is like marginally more expensive per watt, but also comes out to about $1 million as well per megawatt of energy produced. So it is about the same price for capital expenditure. Looking into operating costs, we'd have to research that further to see, you know, kind of the payback period and where one might become more advantageous over the other. Is the CapEx you referred to including land procurement, or did you refer to cost for PV panels? Just not for land procurement. I think that would vary heavily based off of the region you're looking at and the price of land. Depending on where you are.
I think that's all the questions in the chat. I don't know if anyone has any other ones or.
Who is graduating this year and launching your career? Every single one of us. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
I think that's all we have for you guys today then, so.
Thank you so much for
Thanks for
taking the
coming.
time out of your morning and listening to our project.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, everyone.